This is the easiest GM Warlock build that you can play this season, and if you want to be able to complete all of them with no effort, this is the build for you. This build is perfect for beginner players or even veteran players that just want to turn their brain off, and hey, I'm not judging. Now, other builds do have the ability to get through GMs faster, but this really isn't meant for speed runs. This is supposed to be a very effective, super safe, and easy to use build that can benefit you and your team. In fact, it's so easy that if you just want to use your primary weapon the whole time, you totally can. And then on top of all that, you'll even have infinite supers and you never have to swap your loadout at all. Alright, starting off, I think we should take a look at our exotic armor, and that's going to be the Phoenix Protocol. This has the exotic perk Battle Hearth. Kills and assists you make while standing in your well of radiance return super energy. The reason I wanted to start with this is because this is the easiest part of the build to understand. What this is going to allow you to do is spam well of radiances whenever you want to. You don't really need to save well for a specific boss or a specific encounter. You can pretty much just use your well whenever you want to, which makes clearing a GM way easier. The way this is going to work, if you get kills in your well or your teammates get kills that you've assisted on, you will get 50% of your super energy back. And then once you get that 50% back extremely fast, the damage that you're doing, you're going to get normal amounts of super energy, but in most cases you'll be able to get your super back all the way, or at least up to around 80% every single well of radiance that you do place. This is an extremely powerful exotic that you don't have to worry about at all, and not only does it benefit you, but it also helps your teammates out as well by constantly providing them with healing and damage. But now let's take a look at our exotic weapon. This has a lot more going into it, and this is Polaris Lance. This has the exotic perk the Perfect Fit. Precision hits return ammo to the mag. Landing 4 precision hits loads a delayed solar explosive round for your next shot. And if you were curious, this also has Dragonfly with the Catalyst and also Zen Moment to make it easier to land those precision shots. Now, while it is cool that you never have to reload the weapon with every single precision hit you get, the main thing you need to know about Polaris Lance is that solar explosive round will actually apply Scorch. That Scorch is going to play extremely heavy into our artifact and subclass, and it's what's going to allow this weapon to ignite every single 5 shots. So like I said, there is a lot going into it. I'm going to try to explain this as best as I possibly can. I think we need to first look at the artifacts. So we have Flint Striker, so rapid solar weapon precision hits and rapid solar weapon final blows grant radiant. So this is going to be extremely nice with Polaris Lance, because obviously the whole thing with Polaris Lance is to land those precision hits. So now once you constantly get them, you will now become Radiant. Radiant will give you a 25% damage increase, and you can just have this permanently up at all times. So our next artifact perk will play into that, and that's going to be Kindling Trigger. So Radiant causes solar weapons to apply Scorch to unscorched enemies. So the way this is going to synergize is obviously, since you are Radiant with Flint Striker, you can apply Scorch with your solar weapon. Polaris Lance is a solar weapon, so when you first shoot an enemy, you will apply Scorch, and then once you get that Perfect Fit explosion, you will apply more Scorch, which can lead to an ignition. Now, to get that ignition, you are going to need to run the Fragment Ember of Ashes, so you apply more Scorch stacks to targets. So this is very self-explanatory. Every single Scorch you do with this build, you get more stacks. So that means when you first shoot an enemy with Kindling Trigger, that will apply more Scorch stacks, and then when the explosive goes off with Polaris Lance, that will apply more Scorch stacks, and both of those combined together will cause an ignition. So with those two artifact perks, your Fragment and the exotic perk of Polaris Lance, you can now just sit back, constantly have Radiant up all the time, and constantly cause ignitions over and over again. This will give you the ability to only use your primary weapon if you want to, because ignitions are very good for single target damage, and they are very good for ad clear. So how you should play into that is use a wall of radiance kind of far away, just sit back, constantly just pick away with Polaris Lance, explode everything, get another well, progress to the next area, pop well, explode everything, and you are just super safe at all times, and you do a ton of damage. Now, as crazy as these two perks already are combined, we can even amplify that with Raise Precision. So while Radiant Solar Precision Final Blows cause combatants to ignite. So now not only is just doing damage with Polaris Lance igniting enemies, when you get a precision kill, you will also ignite enemies, and then you have to remember that Polaris Lance with the Catalyst does have Dragonfly, so that's even more explosions. So you are constantly doing an insane amount of ad clear with these 3 artifact perks come out together, and they also again do a ton of single target damage. There are some other great artifact perks of this build, but we first need to go over our other weapons. And like I said, you will never have to swap your loadout with this, and you can cover every champion, every GM in the game. And first off, you're going to need a weapon with Choke Clip. You can run whatever weapon you want to. Riptide has it, Valid Disciple Fusion Rifle has it, and even if you have the Duality Grenade Launcher, that can have it. Just get a weapon with Choke Clip, because the way this can work is that when you slow an enemy, it will actually stun an overload champion. That is nice on its own to stun overloads, but that is not going to be the only benefit that it does provide. If we come take a look at our artifacts again, we do have Torch. So while Radiant deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by Strain and Stasis debuffs. Since we are going to be Radiant all the time with Polaris Lance, we can now apply slow to an enemy and get even more damage with our Polaris Lance. And then on top of that, also have the ability to deal with overload champions if we ever need to. Now, another way we can deal with overload champions is going to be with a rocket. You can run whatever rocket you want to, just be sure to swap it out and match the surge of whatever GM that you're doing. Now, this is going to be nice because you do have overload rocket launchers. So rocket launchers are especially effective against overload champions. Now, this champion perk works a little different compared to the other ones. This actually will give you a massive damage increase to those overload champions. So now not only can your rocket stun them, but it also is just doing more damage when you do stun them. And we can even buff that damage up even more with things like Argent Ordnance. So firing a rocket launcher consumes 1 stack of armor charge, granting increased damage and reload speed until you reload or stow your rocket launcher. So this is going to be our main form of armor charge. If we ever need to swap to our rocket launcher, we're not only going to be able to get the extra damage with Argent Ordnance all over the game, but if it is on an overload champion, you can't stun it and do even more damage and just delete them with your rocket. So between Choke Clip and Overload Rocket, you're always going to be able to deal with the overload champions. And then with Polaris Lance, since it does cause ignitions, this will stun unstoppable champions. And since you're going to be Radiant all the time, you can also deal with barrier champions with every single weapon. This combination is extremely effective, and if you never want to change your loadout at all, this is probably going to be your best setup that you can currently run with this season. So just remember, if you only want to use Polaris Lance, you absolutely can, but remember, you can also throw in a rocket from time to time with things like Argent Ordnance, and you can destroy champions. And if you're ever in a sticky situation where something's rushing you, Chill Clip can slow down enemies alongside providing all the other benefits that we went over. But that's pretty much it for the weapons. Let's jump into our subclass now and talk about some ways we can further amplify this build. First off is going to be with our Aspect Icarus Dash. I like to run this just because it is very good for mobility. If you're ever in a sticky situation, you can just dash out of an area. On top of that, if you do get kills while airborne, it will cure you, but that doesn't really come into play too much. I'm mainly just using this for mobility, and again, that can also help out with survivability. If you want to run Heat Rises, you absolutely can, but for me personally, I pretty much always go with Icarus Dash. Now, your only other aspect to really take is Touch of Flame. This will just buff your grenades up, and the grenade I like to run is Healing Grenade, so you will now get ×2 restoration and a better cure. And this is just nice because in any sticky situation, you can just throw this on the ground, you can throw it on a teammate as well, you will heal them, and you can just make sure you stay alive. Now for your melee, I would highly recommend Celestial Fire with this build because of an artifact perk called Revitalizing Blast. So causing damage with a solar ability weakens champions and bosses for a short duration. Once again, you're going to be sitting back with this build a lot. Celestial Fire has a very, very long range, and we're going to try to get our melee up as much as possible with this build so you can constantly use this to apply debuffs. If you see a champion, you can throw your melee out on them and then just start landing precision hits with your Polaris Lance and let everything else do its work. For the class ability, I do like to run Healing Rift just again to further help my teammates out. This paired with Well Radiant, you will always have a way to heal your teammates, but if you want to run something like Phoenix Dive, you absolutely can since it does have a lower cooldown, which can help out with some armor mods. But for our other fragments, I do like to run Ember of Benevolence, so applying Restoration Cure or Radiant to allies increases grenade melee and class ability regeneration for a short duration. Since we're always going to be able to apply Cure or even Restoration with something like the Healing Grenade, this just means all our abilities are going to be coming back faster. The main thing is that we're going to get our melee back a lot faster, so we can always apply those debuffs to the champions and bosses. This also just works in the background. Again, you don't really have to worry about it at all. As long as your teammates in a rift, you heal them, or even if they're in a Well of Radiance, you will have this benefit applied to you. The next up is going to be Ember of Empyrean. So solar weapon or ability final blows extend the duration of restoration and radiant effects applied to you. Now, admittedly, you don't really need to take this since you do have the artifact perk applying radiant to you, but I like to take this just so I can make sure to keep it up at all times. And since I Ember in the Healing Grenade and applying ×2 restoration to myself, I can also keep that restoration up every single time I get a kill with Polaris Lance. Again, it's just kind of a thing that works in the background. You don't really have to think about, and it just gives you an extreme benefit of not really having to worry about your buffs. You can swap this out for other things if you would like to, but if you want to go the ultimate turn your brain off build, I would definitely recommend having this equipped. Now for the final fragment, it is going to be Ember of Charge. So your solar ignition spread scorch to affected targets. So since Polaris Lance can constantly cause ignitions not only from doing damage but also getting precision kills, this just means now you're going to apply even more scorch. Once your Polaris Lance explosion goes off, you will scorch enemies. If you ignite any of those enemies, they will also scorch more enemies, and then it can just become this crazy chain reaction of scorch ignition, and you can just blow an entire battlefield up. This fragment is ridiculously strong paired with Polaris Lance, and it further helps going into that only use your primary weapon playstyle. But that is pretty much it for your subclass. A lot of this does come from your artifact and your weapons. Your subclass kind of just helps benefit it a little bit, with the only main thing obviously being Well of Radiance, and then also things like Ember of Ashes to apply more scorch, and then also Celestial Fire with the artifact perk so you can apply debuffs is also very nice to keep in mind. Now for stats with this build, I would highly recommend 100 Resilience so you can get your 30% damage reduction, and I would go with 100 Strength because again, you want to have your Celestial Fire up as much as possible so you can always apply those debuffs. And then for the other stats, Recovery and Discipline are going to be your best options to go into so you can get more Rift cooldown and also more Healing Grenade cooldown so you can use those in your sticky situations to keep you and your team alive. But now let's jump into armor mods, and if you'd like to see a written guide on this build, be sure to head over to Mobalytics. I will link everything down below, and you can check that out while I go over it in the video. And my first mod is going to be Harmonic Siphon, so I can make some orbs on rapid Polaris Lance kills. This is going to be nice for extra super energy alongside also providing you armor charge for your Argent Ordnance, and obviously making orbs can also benefit your teammates as well. Now next up is going to be Heavy Ammo Finder. So this just means I can get some more heavy. Since I am running an exotic weapon for my primary weapon, this will proc more often, and having more heavy is always good. Since you are running a rocket, you will get a ton of benefit out of this because you can pretty much just get a rocket every single time a heavy ammo brick drops. Now Dynamo is also very good, so you can get some extra super energy when you use your class ability. Since you're going to be able to use your Rift a lot, this just means you can further top off a Well of Radiance, and again, with Phoenix Protocol, you're going to have infinite wells. This can just further help play into that. Now for my arms, I do like to take a Harmonic Loaders just so I can reload the Polaris Lance a little bit faster. You don't have to take this. This is kind of just something that I'm just used to at this point. It's hard to not play with it. So you can definitely swap this out for any other mods you want to. If you want to double up on things like Impact Induction and Focusing Strike, which are my other two mods, you absolutely can. Doubling up on these mods don't provide a huge amount of increase, but it technically is a little bit more, and may will provide you more benefits. Since Polaris Lance, you don't really have to reload it, but this is just nice because every now and then you miss a precision shot and you get to where you have to reload, so this just makes it a little faster. But with Impact Induction and Focusing Strike, what these are going to do is just every single time you do melee damage, you get grenade cooldown and you get rift cooldown. So again, you want to use your melee all the time to apply the debuffs to the champions and bosses. So now you can just get some extra energy back for your other two abilities. Now for your chest piece, always go with resistant mods. None of these other mods matter whatsoever, and this will just make you as tanky as you can be, especially paired with your 100 resilience. Now for your boots, these are going to be all based on orb pickup, recuperation, invigoration, and absolution. These are going to give you health, melee energy, and all your ability energy back just every single time you pick up an orb. Again, you're going to make orbs with Harmonic Siphon, so you're going to be even more unkillable, and you can throw your melees out a lot more. And then again, also you get some extra energy for your grenade and class ability. Now for our class item, we do need to take a mod that can give us armor charge when we pick up an orb power, so I'm running 1-2 finishers. So the thought process behind this is that if you do get a finisher, you will be provided melee energy, which is nice to have, but again, we're not really using it for that. We're going to be using it so we can proc our Argent Ordnance mod, because again, we do have to have a way to get armor charge. So if you never go for finishers, you will never use this, but if you ever have to use a finisher, you will at least get some benefit out of it. But this will now allow you to actually give yourself armor charge to proc Argent Ordnance for your rocket launchers. Now our next mod is going to be Outreach. So when I use my class ability, I can just get some extra melee energy. Again, your melee will provide class ability, and now your class ability can provide melee, and alongside the super energy from Dynamo. And then finally, I like to take a powerful attraction, so whenever I use my class ability, I can actually pick up orbs around me. Again, picking up orbs is going to be very good for armor charge, rocking all these mods right here, and since you can spam them all the time anyway, this is just a no-brainer to take in my opinion. But that is the build. If you were curious about the Transmog, this is what I'm running. As you see, I definitely was trying to go for a very dragon themed with this. I think it looks absolutely sick. It's taking advantage of the Phoenix Protocol armor, and I'm pretty sure the dragon helmet came from Trials, and it even is using some of last season armor as well. I think it turned out really cool, and if you want to make your warlock look like this, definitely be sure to copy it down. But all right, that's going to do it for this build. Again, this is just a very easy to use setup. You just sit in the back of the map, shoot your player slants, cause ignitions everywhere, use your Well of Radiance all the time, there's really no need to save it, and then occasionally throw in some rockets for your overload champions and deal some extra damage to champions and bosses. Be sure to always debuff enemies with your melee as well, and again, just reap the rewards without really having to put a bunch of thought into it. I really hope you all enjoyed the build, and I hope this can get you some GM clears this season. I wish you all the best of luck on putting this together for yourself, but thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day. Peace.